Hello, everybody. Today you are in for an awesome treat. Like, it's so freaking awesome. You're not even going to believe this. So I have today with me on this episode of Zigzag Leap, Shay Sun, who is in the middle of his pre-book launch. There's just so much stuff going on, guys. You have missed so much of this conversation. I can't even tell you right now. So we're just going to dive right in, and we'll come back to introductions in a minute. So let me just start with, you know what? Let's go back. Let's do an introduction. Shay, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Nisha, for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Shay Sun. I am a happiness empowerment leadership coach. I was teaching in the public school system for 21 years, and recently I made a major shift during COVID, and that was to rebrand my business. I started coaching back in 2014. Shay Coaching, and now I've rebranded to WABA International LLC. And WABA, W-A-B-A, initially stand for Wise Ass Badass, because I was inspired by people like Jesus, Gandhi, Lao Tzu, and all the people out there that were perceived as wise asses, but in their own right, they were badasses when history remembers them for the massive changes they were able to ripple across time space. And so basically for me, once I rebranded, I really thought in terms of what is it the fact that I'm really about. And really comes down to happiness. But what kind of happiness? Authentic happiness. What does authentic happiness mean? It means the fact that you stop shitting on yourself and you stop allowing other people to shit on you too.
I love that. Okay, so that goes into like giving yourself permission to do whatever it is that, you know, that you're here and created to do. So when you're talking about like stop shitting on yourself, like what is your definition of permission if there are no shoulds?
There is one should, and that is that you should honor free will. Your God-given free will needs to be a real, conscious choice. There's a difference between responding or reacting to other people, reacting to the fear. That's not a real choice. It's being done to you.
Right.
You want to make sure the fact that when you're making a choice that it's consensual. Does that make sense? Right. Go through your choices consensually. That's what I'm saying. Don't allow it to happen to you in all things. Once you do that, then you feel good because you are in power. You are in your own power. And what is your power? Your power is the fact that God says to you, you have choice. Right. And I love that. I honestly believe that's what it comes down to. Free will. Honor free will. Honor each other's free will. So that because when you honor each other's free will, then you basically look at other human beings differently, because then you stop shitting on them either. You don't. Why are we? If we all just chilled a little bit and honor the fact that we all have free will, to the toddler, to the lady that's in the retirement home, across the board, honor the free will within yourself. Honor the free will in other people. And we're all copacetic, because at that point, then we just get excited. What are you doing with your free will? What are you doing with your free will? What am I doing with free will? And let's honor those, and then to have compassion when our free will zigzags, because life is not a straight line. After my divorce, I said that to people all the time. Life is not a straight line.
I love that. Okay, so speaking of not a straight line, we have talked about your background. And so we've gone from talking about teacher and seminary and youth pastor and like all these things. And I'm like, okay, how do you get on that path to where you are now? So what's going on?
Whew, that is a loaded question.
I know, but that's where you bring out your best.
Oh yeah. So I'll try to just give you I'm gonna skip a rock. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna skip rock, right? So you can just skip Skipping rock would be the fact that when I was 15 years old, and I didn't mention to you this earlier during our pre-show, at 15 years old, the Asian mafia visited my house.
What?
I was tied up in a home invasion robbery. And that event was the drop in the puddle, right? The ripple, the lake, right? Yeah, that's what it did, right? And actually it was like a petal, because it started blossoming something within me. And what it blossomed to me was actually a spiritual awakening. Because a friend after that invited me to church, and it's through that I started opening my eyes to some spiritual concepts I never understood. I didn't understand death, and I didn't understand resurrection. Now, I don't go to church right now, even though I went to seminary, things like that. But there's something fundamental about understanding, because the motif of the death and resurrection is old as time. We see that in religions across the board. So I have phoenix tattoos, right? Something about dying and then coming back to life. And I believe that coming back to life is actually more of an authentic piece of you. It's the fire that burns within you. What is that fire? And so what happened was, after I started going to church, I had this huge passion for helping others, right? I've always had that since growing up. And so that brought me actually to going and wanting to become a youth minister. So I went down from Northern California to Southern California to a Southern Baptist college. And being in a Southern Baptist college, there was a lot of international students. So God opened my eyes to something very important. And that was the fact that God fashioned me with a cultural heritage for a reason. And it was not an accident. I'm Chinese.
Explain that. I need to hear that part.
Yeah, so I'm Chinese, right? So my English is not my first language, even though I went later on and majored in my worst subject, which is English. So the fact that I can actually go to China so that I can share the message, the good news, basically the good news of death and resurrection, of transformation. It's the message of transformation, right?
Right.
And so because the fact that now I suddenly had access because of my skin color, because of my eye shape and things like that to this whole community, I decided to go ahead and then go from being a religion major, a sociology minor, to actually to an English major. So that's what put me on the path of actually going into teaching and things like that. And so that's what happened. And so then later on, after I met my ex at the LAX airport. I met her at the airport. We dated in China.
That's an indication right there for you.
Exactly. And so then later on, we couldn't have biological children. This is really open, but I struggled, whatever, however you want to say, with male infertility. And so because of that, we adopted 2 kids from mainland China. Instead of going to China, we brought China to us. And so then through the process of, I was teaching and things like that. But one of the things I realized was the fact that one of the best ways to help other people actually is through mentorship. It's actually through, in church, we call it discipleship. In the other world, we call it, like coaching, right? We coach other people into their own awareness, right? So that's what I did, because one of I love Piaget. Piaget is the shit. He's the constructivist theory in education. And he's basically saying the only way for you to really grasp onto the meaning is when you construct it yourself. You got to construct meaning. And the way we do that is through powerful questions, right? This goes to like Plato, Aristotle, all those amazing people who are constantly the art of questioning. So I started taking the shitload of coaching courses. And through all the courses that I took, there was more of a piece that I blended in. Before I was calling it Asian fusion. And Asian fusion just means the fact that whatever my cultural background in my American upbringing, plus my religious upbringing, plus all the things that I've learned in terms of my coaching, I bring all that together. And when I bring that together, when I meet a client, I'm able to tailor it to your taste. It's like one of those places where the Mongolian walk things where like you grab a little bit of this and that and you put it together and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so fucking good. Well, it's good because it is suited to your needs, whatever your taste buds are, right? So one of the things I'm really good at is that I'm able to pinpoint where you want to be and then laser focus on what is it right now where you are currently at. If you don't know where you're at, I can help you to come to that awareness. And that is the reason why, if I can take you from point A to point B, from point death to point resurrection, is transformation.
Okay, so this just goes into like the other conversations that we were having. Like this whole path of conversation that we've had this morning has just been absolutely amazing. And so one of the questions that I had for you was, you were telling me a story about how you came back to this point, because you were teaching and then all the things happen, and now here you are.
Right, so you're talking about the recent transformation. Right. Yeah. So the recent transformation, it was during COVID. And so that was just last year, right? 2020, right? Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I believe the school board was talking about whether or not we should go back into in-person, and that conversation was happening. And I was seeing my acupuncturist. And I told Ed, like, this is what's going on in my life. And Ed says, let's calm down your brain. So he stuck me, we had been seeing Ed for a couple of years. I lay down, and it's funny because Ed actually has like Christian music, instrumental music playing in the background. Sometimes it's Disney, and sometimes it's white. But it was like, I think the song was "As a Deer," right? As the deer panted forth the water, right? Mm-hmm. So during that song, I hear, no, not audibly, but in my heart, and I've been hearing this intuitive, small, still voice since I was 15 years old. That's when God first spoke to me. And that is actually a story unto itself. It started with hiccups, and God did something with my hiccups at 15. So anyway, yeah. So, but going back to the acupuncturist table, I heard God say to me, my God goes to rated R movies, so he cusses. So I heard God say to me, bullshit. 21 blackjack, you won. 22, you bust.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, so because God speaks to us in ways that we can understand. He uses our jargon, our lingo, because that's why Jesus became a man, so that we can identify it with him. He takes on the shape and the form. And so for me, and Jesus is a total shit, by the way. So like not the white westernized imperialistic Jesus, but the Jesus like hangs out with like hoes and like cheaters, right? Like people who cheat money, like tax collectors and prostitutes. Like that is my Jesus, right? The poor and things like that, right? Or the rich that need transformation. That's my Jesus. And so then basically what happened was the fact that, when I heard this bullshit thing, what God was saying to me at that point was 21. I had just finished my 21st year teaching. And God is saying, you already won. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't know exactly what it means. I have some hints, but I don't think we can actually know exactly if your leap of faith was a leap of faith until you've taken the leap of faith. It's only in retrospect that you realize the fact that was your journey. So that's what I did. 21 blackjack, 22 you bust. I don't know exactly what that meant, but what I heard but basically what I was hearing from God was, do not move on to your next year of teaching. And then I did the normal thing that we all do, right? The saboteur comes in, the self-doubt, the arguing back, the wrestling, and things like that. And I was like, but I have child support. I have this. I have debt to pay off. I have all these things. I'm still managing all these things within myself. And so then I heard God say to me, "Do you want me to get Aaron?" I was like, "Oh shit, no." And what Aaron means is the fact that when God chose Moses was like, I can't talk, I stutter, and things like that. And he says, and then he referred to Aaron, right? And so his brother. And so for me, it was like, do you want me to get someone else? And I said, no. I've already said, here I am. I already said that. I've made that clear in my life. Like, I'm going to be an open vessel, right? Right. I heard it say, God does not want your ability as much as your availability, right? Because he can always fill you with whatever you need to be filled with. And so I said, all right, God, now what? And I heard God say, let me make some calls. And I was thinking to myself, like, does God use an Apple or an Android platform? Literally, my brain goes into crazy spaces, right?
Did you figure that one out?
No, I did not figure that one out. I think God is all loving, so I think he probably embraces, exactly. And so, so then what happened was I literally told Ed, and I told his wife, who was the counter, I said, God just spoke to me. Because I wanted to make sure that I was held accountable to this moment of transformation and not later on doubt the fact that maybe I was just needled up and just having some sort of hallucination, right? Because I don't think that's what it was. So then I got out of the car, I went and I was at a stoplight, and then I heard God say to me, by the way, you've already made some calls. And I looked at my calendar, sure enough, I had lined up all these appointments. And in each conversation, it was almost like God saying, here, I'm going to reassure you that I always know where you're at, and I always know where other people are at. And because of that, rest assured, you'll be safe with me. I know my people. I know your people. We're all good. It's the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing, right? Like God can send people up. And look at us being brought together, right? Through our mutual friend Casey. I think this is what it is about. It's the fact that all of us have access to people and to resources and to whatever. It's an issue of understanding the fact that we are divinely infinite. That's what it's about.
I love it. Okay, so we have Pastor Deland Shorter on with us right now. And thank you so much for your comments. So he is convinced that God is using Apple, just so that
I'm literally using my iPhone 12 right now. So yes.
Right on this side. So he loves us all though.
Yes.
Okay, so he has a question for you. How does he shape or add to your faith?
How does God add to my faith? Is that what that means? Or is he talking about his own faith? Just faith in general. How does God add to our faith?
Let's just go with faith in general.
Yeah. So what is faith? Ultimately, what is faith, right? I think faith is trust in action. That's what faith is, right? So how do I know that I trust this chair that I'm sitting in? Is because I'm sitting in it. Right. That's faith, right? So what is faith?
Which goes back to faith without works. Is
yes, it is. Exactly. And I believe what faith ultimately is faith, trust in love. I think fear is actually faith. Faith in things going wrong.
Right.
That's what fear is, right? Fear is always in the future. I fear that something is going to happen.
Right. And it's all your
Right.
imaginations coming to
Exactly.
life in that moment.
Exactly. So when you have faith, you're having faith, the fact that good is going to happen, that good is going to happen to you. But why do you believe that good is going to happen? Is because God is good. Because the mastermind behind all of this is good. And
Yes.
that goodness dwells within us, even though there's suffering, even though there's pain. Ultimately, even through our pain, good can come from it. In all things, God can make good things, bad things transform into good. That's what it is. Casey did this. Our mutual friend did this deep dive into my fear and my pain, and she was trying to get me to. Did she do that with you? Shout out
Yes.
to me. Yeah. I cried like I never cried before. And my crying was actually feeling the unworthiness of me being born out of wedlock and feeling I did not deserve to be here. So I went to my parents and I told them that. And they said, we never felt that way about you. I went to my grandfather and I told him about that. And you know what my grandfather said? My grandfather says, do you not know? Do you not understand why I named you what I named you? My Chinese name is Xian Liang. And Xian Liang means first good.
Wow.
He says that when you were brought into our lives, I took a bad situation and I asked myself, how can we transform this into good? So I had your parents get married to one another to transform this. And I said to my grandfather, you did not name me. You did not name me. God named me, because God is in the business of changing what appears to be bad and transforming that into good. Isn't that the Joseph story? Isn't that being sold into slavery and then being right hand of Pharaoh? This is what we're talking about. So in our lives, what could God do? We see the things in our life, we see the mess, and then God will bring order to that mess.
Every time. You know what? We were talking earlier and going back to the name thing. So you were saying that, you know, how your grandfather.
Yeah, my Chinese name.
And,
yes.
And God always uses name changes when things start doing transformation. So when you got to Shay Sun, can you explain to everybody how you got there?
Yeah. So my English name originally was like this weird phonetic spelling from like Taiwan and things like that. And so later on, when I became a citizen, I actually legally changed my name to Shay, Shay, which is basically the same sound as it was before, and which means first. And then my middle name, Liang, which was in English Liang, which means good. I changed it to Timothy because when I was in youth group, my youth minister would always see me as his Timothy, and he'd be like my Paul, going back to mentorship. And Timothy means honoring God. And so Shay, first, that's where it derives from. Timothy meaning honoring God, right? Theo, Timothy has the word Theo in there, which means God. So honoring God, and my last name is Sun, S-U-N, but it sounds like S-O-N. So first honoring God, Son is first honoring Jesus. Because I believe the fact that Jesus holds for us the model of transformation. I think he is the archetype of transformation. He's the Phoenix archetype. And he's the archetype that transforms out of his love for the big picture and for you and me. That's why it's so amazing. And I think that is we can access that. We can access that understanding. The fact that Jesus shows us the way. And I believe the way is to be able to let go, to allow things to happen into your lives, to allow the path. And I believe it's about co-creation. We co-create with God. We co-create, right? Delight yourself in the Lord, and the desires of your heart. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned earlier, like in that transformation and co-creation and all of those things, we were talking about, you know, confession and, you know, how hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
Can you explain your theory on like going from hurting to healing and, you know, stopping and starting the ripple?
Yeah, so I believe this when we're talking about I don't really like using the word sin, but when we talk about the ripple effect, right? I think the ripple effect is like you go to work, you get upset, you come home, you kick the dog, or you yell, or you don't have patience with your wife or your husband, things like that's the ripple effect. I am hurt, and because I did not know how to transmute that hurt into something else, we pass it along.
Right.
So what absorbs that is love, compassion, mercy. We absorb that. And how do we do that? We do that through awareness. And what is awareness? Awareness is acknowledgement. And I think that's where the word confession comes from in the scriptures. That's what it means. It just means to acknowledge the reality of the situation, because you can't, if you don't know, you cannot change, right? You don't know what you don't know. That's just what it is, right?
Exactly.
So then once you know, you acknowledge it. You acknowledge what happened to you, whatever your suffering is. I had to acknowledge the fact that there was a home invasion robbery and the fact that I had a blade to my throat. I had to acknowledge that before I can move on. If you do not acknowledge it, then you basically try to fool yourself into an illusion, except your body remembers. Dis-ease. Not at ease anymore, right? So what is ease? Ease is peace. It's inner peace, which is, I believe, the formula for happiness. Pleasure and peace is happiness.
Exactly, which brings us to where you are now.
Yes.
So you were in there on the acupuncture table. You heard this message from God. What does this have to do with your cat? And then how does this get us to happiness?
Oh my goodness. So I was at I was living in an apartment and I saw this cat, the super friendly cat. And as soon as I saw her, her name just appeared in my brain, and the name was Nala from The Lion King. And I couldn't get Nala out of my head. And that night I wrote a poem for her and I posted on Instagram. Yeah. It really was about softening up my heart and allowing me to feel again. And later on, I brought Nala in, I adopted her during COVID to have a companion. And there was a moment where I watched Nala, and Nala was struggling, walking on the what is that called? Gosh, the porch, right? Like she was about to fall, and I just blanked on that. So the word I have two types of ADD, and one of them is temporal lobe, which deals with language. So yeah, but she was on the railing. She almost fell off, and I paused and I said, "Don't allow your fear to transfer her to her fear. Trust that she has agility, because that's how God made her. She's acting in her natural self." And so I asked myself, what is your natural self? And I believe the fact that my natural self is a combination of this person who is this super excited person who wants to transform the world and do good things, right? Which is in my mind kind of like, in regards to what you think about Elon Musk, he has this like eccentric, like I want to help people, right? Right. And then it was funny because I actually was on this dating thing and someone saw me dressed up and they're like, oh my gosh, he looks like an Asian Elon Musk. And so I had this Elon thing in my brain. But then I also had this idea of like, if I never came to the United States, I was born in Seoul. I'm Chinese, but if I always stayed in China, where would I be? And I actually saw myself. I had this visualization of me sitting in a room with nothing. It was super minimalistic, and I was like this Taoist monk or whatever. But I like sex too much, and so that wouldn't work for me. So that's not gonna work, right? And so but it was inner peace. So what I did was I actually took those two words, the Elon, and that was the Zen Shay. And I said, what does Elon Zen Shay look like? And Elon Zen Shay was easy Shay, ease Shay, flow Shay. Yes. That's what's about, right? And so what my cat taught me was this: in your natural state, who do you want to be? And I believe that for me, Elon would be the pleasure, and part of the pleasure is helping other people. And the peace part is how to remain grounded in the midst of that. And I believe that what my cat did was my cat allowed me to understand the fact that there's a song from The Lion King where Nala says to Simba in Can You Feel the Love Tonight? He's holding back, he's hiding from what I can't decide. Why won't he be the king I know he is, the king I see inside? The king I see inside is divinity. It's royalty that we all have. And because I felt so unworthy after my divorce and I was struggling, I literally Nisha, I could have had a hard time walking across the street because I felt like I was taking up space, that people had to wait for me to cross the street. That's how bad I felt about myself.
Wow.
But once Nala helped me to return to the fact that I am Simba, it shifted everything. In fact, one night, and I didn't share with you this earlier, but one night I literally felt a hand pass through my prefrontal cortex in my forehead, and it felt like Simba. It was the strangest feeling I never had, and I think it felt like an anointing. Because when in one of my conversations with Casey, I'm being very vulnerable and sharing all this because I have not shared this on online before. But I'm just telling you, this is what happened to me. Take it or leave it, whatever you think. But I was on the phone with Casey, and I literally went like this. And the reason why is because, and I looked up into the ceiling because I felt energy shoot through my head all the way down to my feet. And I felt my throat chakra just starting to vibrate a little bit. And then, but it went slowly like Drano. The second time it happened, it went whoosh, and I felt like my root chakra was healing. Casey literally said to me, like, what is going on? And I said, I don't know. This has never happened to me before. But I think it goes back to energy. Call it the Holy Spirit, call it a double filling, whatever name you give it, right? The first verse of Taoism is the name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal. So regardless of the name you use, I believe it was a frequency of energy that I allowed myself to get tapped into. And I think that tapped into the energy is the infinite source of the world. It's that power that connects us all. And once I felt that, I really believe that this whole Simba thing was an anointing. And the reason why I think the anointing happened is because during times of crisis, famines, right? Famines, natural disasters, political unrest, God calls forth prophets. But not necessarily the kind of prophets that can, like prophecy and seeing the future, but a prophet being a voice to speak truth. To speak the authentic truth is just what the reality, and the reality is the fact that we are not alone. And you are created to be a beautiful, powerful human being, regardless of anything that's going on into your life, that beautiful things can happen.
Yep. So in all of these beautiful things, we had this discussion about like being your authentic self. And that is like the most beautiful thing that you could possibly do for yourself and for the world.
Yes.
And we were talking about, you know, how permission to leap came about. And I was telling you about my version of, you know, Peter walking on water.
Yes.
And you flipped that thing around in a way that just like totally blew my mind. So can you explain to everybody your youth ministry story?
Oh yeah. So I like I mentioned, I want to be a youth minister before. I think that's kind of the energy that I give off because I love to play and things like that. And so one of the things I did was I did we did this like doing a skit, right, for youth group. And what we did was I asked people, what does it look like? Let's tell the story of Peter walking on the water from the perspective of the fish. What does the fish see if we could personify the fish? And I believe that what the fish would have seen is he would have seen Jesus. He would have seen the frequency, the light shining through that pure energy, right? So he would, I mean, I think the nature would recognize when we are connected to the source. I believe that. But he would have also seen the fact that Peter's frequency of light was not as pure, and yet he was walking on the water. So what would a fish think? I think a fish would think, like, if that dude who is not 100% fully expression, the whole capacity of that, then what does that mean for me? And I just thought to myself, maybe that's where the fish just takes a leap. And over time, I don't know if it's an evolution thing, just making stuff up, right? Because flying fish came way before, 2000 BC. But yeah, could you imagine the fish just kept leaping and leaping and leaping, and then starting to be able to fly just that much more? Or like the duck that dives into the water and learns to swim, or the squirrel that learns to glide with those little armpit hanging flaps or whatever. So in our lives, what is it in us? What is it in us that we have to somehow break through or penetrate or to release, right? What do we have to unlock in ourselves? When I say have to, I don't mean have to as in a should, but that we get to because of our free will.
Exactly.
What is it within us that once we can unlock that piece, that we start enjoying what it means to be us, me? Because I think that's where happiness happens, right? It's you look at the birds who are singing outside. They're not singing for any. They're not necessarily singing for other people. They're just singing to sing because they're birds. Just like Nala does Nala things, my cat does Nala things because she's a cat. So by purely just being herself, she gives glory to God. And what does glory to God mean? It just means the fact that you are expressing the fact that this is who I am, and that who I amness is worthy to be observed, to worthy to be seen, to be worthy to be heard. I am my molecules in time space is worthy. It's valued. There's something about me that I want you to see because it's not just about me. It's the blessing that has come to you, goes through you. That's what it's about. And so you can pass on that light to other people. Illumination, the light bulb does not exist for itself. The light bulb exists so that by being that giving off light and heat and energy, it allows to light up the room. And if we could all do that, what a beautiful place this will be.
Exactly. Which, going back to, the fact that Peter was the one in this story. This is another thing that, you and I were talking about. Peter, who is, doesn't have the best reputation among all of the disciples, and then we've got, other people throughout the Bible who were used, who are not, the most reputable characters, but they are the ones who made the most difference. Moses, killed the guy, ran off into the woods, and then came back to lead the people out of Israel. So it's like God uses, as you said earlier, and, as the Bible says, he uses the foolish things to confound the wise. So when in all of this, being authentically you and getting to that point of happiness, like how does that work? Because most people won't accept that. I've done things in the past.
Yes.
So how can I
so
be
I love this, because look at scripture carefully. Now, I don't necessarily believe the fact that at all. I used to believe in scripture differently now that when I look at it. But when you look at some of the passages, it's fascinating. I don't remember which gospel it is, but when the angels first appear to I think it was Mary, and he says, "Go and get the disciples," and then the angel says, "And Peter." It was like just remember that God has not forgotten Peter after betraying him.
Love that.
It's about understanding the fact that God knows us by name. The universe knows our name. So regardless of the shit that's happened in your life, regardless of the shoulds that you allowed in your life, or you created for yourself, other people, or society, whatever it might be, you are not lost. You are redeemable. And what does redeemable mean is the fact that God will recycle the shit in your life and plant a tree and grow it and let the birds of the air nest and build nests in it. That's what that means. So where's the hope? The hope is accepting the fact that this has been the trauma in my life. These are the wounds that were created. But I will use the scars, and I will use those wounds. I will reach out my hands and share with people who I am authentically. And I will understand that some may not be open to that. But that's okay. Because even after Jesus resurrected in Matthew, it says, and some doubted. So anytime you feel the fact that not everyone's going to like you, they didn't even like Jesus. They still doubted the guy who came down to the fucking grave. So if that's the case, then when we go through imposter syndrome, we just look to that example, and then allows us to not feel so alone. Right. You walk your path, I walk my path. Those people who will resonate with you, you'll turn to the side and you'll be like, fucking hell, let's all do this together. We're all going the same direction. And the direction is a direction of authenticity. It's a direction of love. It's a direction of the fact that I see you, you see me. And even though the fact that you've come through whatever has happened to you, I deeply and completely accept you. You deeply and completely accept me. And from that place of radical acceptance of regardless of what happened in your life, you will move forward. You will move forward because time moves forward and time is life. So because time moves forward, you move forward, you will begin to be able to see things you've never seen before because you are open your eyes. You're not putting your head down anymore. And I put my head down in my life as well. And because I've been through so much grief and sadness and anger and all the stages of grief, I know what it feels like for the yin and the yang. I can see the contrast. It is through contrast that we can see the beauty, the distance between point A and point B, the distance between death and resurrection, the distance between ash and the blazing phoenix.
Love that. So coming from, like, you've been in that low place, like you said, like you weren't even worthy in your mind of taking up space. And now you're talking to people about this concept of happiness, which a lot of people will discount because they say happiness is based on external things. And they say you need to focus on joy, which, we talked about earlier. And, going from your definition of happiness, of pleasure and peace, and then getting up to bliss. Can you explain how that process works, how you figured all of this out in this
So I actually was one of those people who actually tried to make the distinction between happiness and joy, right? But I think that colloquially, because we use the word happy, and words are just words because the meaning that we give them, but we do use, like happy Saturday, happy birthday, happy Valentine's Day, like we use that word. So I think at that point is just really looking at the word and then squeezing it and seeing what does that actually mean. And I believe what it means is happiness is not just about pleasure. It's not. And the reason why happiness cannot just be about pleasure is because Pleasure is very momentary. And then once the pleasure is gone, you actually don't feel happy anymore. So you have to, by combining that with peace, inner peace, then peace is what then grounds you. But the thing is, for me, that's not everyone else's definition, but if all I had was peace, I think it'd be boring, because the fact that I need some excitement in my life, I want some novelty in my life. And I think that's where pleasure comes in. Pleasure comes in through our five senses. And I believe the fact that, I think there's who was his name? John Piper, that called himself a Christian hedonist. And a hedonist is one who enjoys pleasure, but he believed the fact that, and I believe this also, that when we enjoy, when we take the first bite of a strawberry and we can appreciate that strawberry, we're actually giving glory to the creator of that strawberry. It's appreciating the artist. So I believe the fact that when we can light up our senses instead of numbing our senses, and we can enjoy that with pleasure, I believe the fact that we are actually doing an act of worship. And when we can do that in a grounded space of eternal peace within ourselves, I believe the fact that we have access to happiness. But at the same point, I think there's something beyond happiness, because what's beyond happiness is coupling that, right? So if it's pleasure plus peace, and we add in another two P's, and the other two P's are purpose and passion.
Right.
And once you do that, I believe the fact that you start feeling flow. And we see a lot of athletes and celebrities, like movie stars, they can go into flow. And when you go into flow, it's because of the fact you're following your unique bliss. Because that, I believe, is what's beyond happiness, is bliss. It's getting to the state where you actually don't even think about your happiness anymore, because you're in such flow. I don't think my cat thinks about happiness, because it's just being a cat. But then even beyond bliss, there's something too. And what's beyond bliss is. And is just as an acceptance of just everything. It is what it is. This too shall pass. Let it be. And I believe that when God says to Moses, I am who I am. I am who I am is present progressive. It's just a state of being. That's why the I ams are so powerful. In fact, my evening ritual with my girlfriend is I will say, I am happy. And she will say, I am peace. And then I say, I am freedom. And then she says, I am love. And I say, I am pleasure. And she says, I am prosperity. And then I say, I am infinite. And then she says, I am yours. And then I say, I am yours. And that's what our evening ritual of our I ams, because that's how powerful the I ams are. You be careful of your I ams, right?
Yeah.
So this is the reason why I feel unhappy versus I am unhappy. There's a different feeling to that. There's a whole different feeling to that. I think this is where, and then there's something even beyond is. And what's beyond is just silence. It's just outside of time. It's not even a state of even just, it's God before time, before the let there be light. This is, I be still and know that I am God, that I fill all time space. Every molecule, everything in existence is a piece of me in that sense. And I think once we can tap into the still quiet space of outside of time, I think we access something infinite. And once we can do that space, I think some of our problems, it's kind of like when they've taken pictures of the planet Earth from gazillion miles, however many miles away. And literally it's the pale blue dot. And every war and every love and every goodness, everything just came from this pale blue dot. So from that perspective, what are our problems?
Right.
We feel them, but from the perspective of your infinite self, all just little
one moment in time versus like the entire time. Like
yes,
it's just a moment. And like you said earlier, this too shall pass.
Exactly. I think it's an issue of consciousness. One of the things I learned was this. I believe the fact that our infinite selves actually do exist outside of time, because God is God and God sees us all. So the way that I think about it is this. I believe the fact that our lives are like a film reel. And I believe that just like those old school film reels in a movie theater, I believe that the light that is passing through that film reel is our consciousness. It's our moment of awareness. But the whole film reel is already there. So it's trusting in that film reel is complete and it has purpose, regardless of what you're feeling in this moment of time.
Well, okay. So let me ask you this.
Yes.
You've discovered all of this and you've like gotten to the word purpose in all of this. what is the purpose of this moment right here where you're putting out this book for, the Happiness Project?
Yes. So there was a question that was asked to me, and that was, if you had 6 months to live, how would you spend your time? Casey actually asked me that question. Casey's amazing. Our conversation's been huge. And so I said, if I had 6 months to live, I would do a lot of, I would definitely hang out with family. But what I would do is I would write, record, and film. And all I would do is during that 6 months is not all, but a lot of portion of what I would do is I would just write down any wisdom that I've gained over my 46 years or 45 years at that time when Casey asked me of wisdom. I would just pour it all down. I would leave that for my children, my family, my former students, my former clients, clients I wouldn't have had, and I would just pour all that in there. And the reason I would do that is because it's an issue of leaving a legacy. I thought about people like Anne Frank, who wrote that diary at 13 to 15 years old, and yet she's still alive in our consciousness because of that. And so for me, that became part of the purpose. And so later on, when one of my friends, Verna, she's a yoga instructor who launched a Beyond Mindset book, and she got to the Amazon bestseller, and she was like, she did a 1 month and said, hey, I want to teach this to you, right? She offered that, and she kept on pushing me. When is your release date? What's your release date? And I had already had some ideas, and then once I started doing that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a perfect opportunity for me to step into the place and do the thing that I believe that I need to do. And so once that happened, or that I get to do, sorry, got a phone call. And so then what happened was the fact that once I thought about what is that message, it goes back to the whole happiness thing that I've been mentioning. So the book is called The Happy Solution, right? It's really about unleashing that positive power. And the positive power is not a Pollyanna positive power. It really is about looking at to the divinity side. It's the resurrection side of things. That's what it's about. And so it's about that shift. So basically what I did was I asked myself, this is a short read. It's only going to be about 70-something pages. But the image that I had in my brain was this. Let's say that you're in LAX, you're in LA airport, and let's say you see this book, this short little book, right, in the gift shop. You're struggling with some thought, a self-sabotaging thought. There's an emotional piece to that. You pick up this book, you get on the airplane, you fly to San Francisco, which is a 60, 70-minute flight. And by the time you land, because you read this short read, you feel better for whatever meeting you have to go to, be it in your job or a date that you have, or seeing your in-laws or whatever it might be, but you feel that much better. So the way that I envisioned it is that this little book is like a breath mint. It's something to take the stink out of that moment so it doesn't mess you up. Maybe you're triggered by something. Coaching is still necessary. Just like you have to go to a dentist for deep cleaning, you still need to brush your teeth. But sometimes in those moments, just a moment of self-coaching, of going through this 4-step process to be able to get happier immediately, just to take the edge off of it. I believe that if we can do that on a daily habit, I believe the fact that will save us a lot of time of feeling like the fact that we just want to crawl into bed and just sleep, because I've had those moments too. So part of it is, how then do we self-coach ourselves from point A to point B? Before maybe we haven't had a chance to talk to a friend or have an amazing person like you, Nisha, to have an interview with, where you shift your energy. So it's really about energy management. How do you manage your own energy during that time? Because I believe that that's one of our purposes. I believe that we all have a responsibility to use our free will to manage our own energy. I believe that fact. I mean, does anyone want to be married to someone who's unhappy? Does anyone want to? Does any student want a teacher who's unhappy all the time? Do you want an unhappy child all the time? I believe the fact that it is our responsibility to do what we can to experience happiness, so that other people can be uplifted at the same time. It's a responsibility that we have. Right.
It goes back to the ripple effect that we were talking about earlier. Like, each person touches the next one, and so on.
Love others the way you love yourself. Put on the gas mask first. It's not out of selfishness, but because the fact that your own healing will heal others. And part of that healing is that. It's healing us in these moments where we stumble. How do we help ourselves how do we pick ourselves up? How do we build that resilience? Consciousness, awareness.
Yes, I love all of that. So you've done your pre-launch, or you've started your pre-launch. Is it still going on now?
Oh yeah, so my pre-launch was just for that one day, right? Where
Okay.
I did at the 99-cent price, and the proceeds goes to Marin Housing for All, right? A nonprofit. So it was
Right.
during that 99 cents. So yeah, it was that day. The fact that I got to the Amazon bestseller list, new releases for like 3
That was
categories.
awesome.
It was
Like
amazing.
24 hours, you were up there in 3 categories.
Yes, it was amazing. Yeah, it was happiness, emotions, and mental health and emotional mental health. It was incredible. It was amazing. And so right now, like, the price is at $199. I'll change it later on. People are saying the fact that it's kind of low, but this is just the Kindle version. Later on, I'll have to reformat it for the paperback. But yeah, I'm super excited. Oh my gosh, like the support that I felt, and I literally had people. Hold on for 1 second. I'm gonna get choked up a little bit. One of the powerful things that happened because of this is the fact that I had so many people reach out to me that I had not seen in a long time. I hadn't seen for a long time, and one of those people happened to be a former student. And when the former student reached out to me, I was floored by it. I was absolutely floored by what she said to me. And so, if you don't mind, I would love to read what she
Go
said.
for it.
So this is what she said. Hello, Mr. Sun, and good afternoon. You have no idea how happy and excited I am to pre-order your book. I missed the 99-cent deadline, but I don't mind. I know a book from you is worth any price. From the first day I walked into your 8th grade classroom, I knew I would have an amazing school year, and you didn't disappoint. If anyone could do it, it is you, Mr. Sun. I'm so thrilled to know that you have gone #1 from bestseller to best author. I never thanked you before, but thank you for everything you did. I feel in love with literature because you made it fun to learn. Any student that had you as a teacher was blessed, and I know I was. I love reading, and I can't wait to read what you wrote. Your book will be the first in that genre that I will read. If you ever do a book signing, I'll be there with my copy. I know right now it's through Kindle, but like I said, if it's anyone, it's you. You have given me a push to finish my book. I'm currently stuck, and I know one day I'll finish it, and I hope to publish like you. Thank you again, Mr. Sun. I hope you and your family are all well. Hope to hear from you soon, and congratulations. You deserve it.
Wow. So that right there should tell you, like, the impact that you've had. You know, even though you had this moment where you were feeling like you weren't worthy of walking across the street because you were taking up space, like, you've touched lives before and since then.
I was actually my school district, Riverside Unified School District, is one of the largest in the state of California, and I actually was the district teacher of the year. So I was honored by that. That was in 2007, 2008. It was right before I adopted my daughter. And a lot of my students really said to me, like, Mr. Sun, the impact you've had on me was profound. And one of the reasons why I went into public school teaching was because my youth minister told me he had a regret. And his regret was actually going into the ministry, because he thought the fact that if he had actually stepped into the classroom, he'd be able to make a bigger impact on people's lives. So I really did follow in his example in certain ways. I just didn't realize that at the time. So I think the impact we make on other people doesn't necessarily have to be through exactly the words that we say with this religious label or that religious label. But I think about letting your light shine is being about seeing the purpose and the passion in the people that we serve or the people that we interact with. And I believe that by being in their space and holding space for them, they become courageous. And I believe the fact that if they can be courageous enough to show up, to be seen, to speak their truth, I believe the fact that we all gain something. It's like those light brights. I don't know if you remember the light bright as a kid.
Not showing our age or anything, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's an issue. You know what happens if you don't put the light bright and you don't push it all the way in? It doesn't actually shine. Exactly. So I think it's just like click. And I think once you have that click, it's kind of like Legos. Once that puzzle piece fits in, I think there's something about us that feels like we can take a deep breath. Yes, we can breathe a little easier, knowing the fact that our life has meaning, knowing the fact that what I do today that it makes a difference. And like what the student said, it was so powerful. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the fact that this book launch, the pre-launch happened. And this is not the only student that reached out to me. I had many students who reached out to me. You know what I'm saying?
That's awesome. So let's wind down. Where can everybody find you?
Yes, they can find me at www.shaysbackground.com. www.shaysun, SHAYSUN, like the big ball of fire in the sky, .com. They can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram as well. And yeah, I would love, and then also I do have a YouTube channel. I don't have a lot of videos on there, but that's also at Shay Sun. I started something called years ago called Shay Shares. And so that's what that was about. Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out myself too.
Yeah, actually, there's one in there about my interracial dating, because I dated a girl that was African American back in high school in an all predominantly white city. So that interview was fascinating. We literally talked about the struggles we had in our interracial dating back in high school, and that interview was a little long. But that interview, you listen to that, there's not a lot of Chinese guys and black girls dating, and and especially during that time too, right? So that was like the early mid 90s. And so, yeah, that is profound. She's amazing, by the way. We're still friends. In fact, I coached her I've coached her like multiple times. And it's been amazing to get to know her from that space. She's incredible, by the way. Yeah,
I'm gonna go check that out. Actually, I'll link it here so everybody else can watch it too.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it was amazing. We only broke up because she went to an all-black school and I didn't follow her to Howard in DC. That's the only reason. So yeah.
Did you not think you were gonna fit
in? No. You know what's funny though? She actually has a story of, she has our prom photo, a freshman year, and people would come into her dorm room and say like, "You dated a Chinese guy?" And literally that's what happened, to the point where at one time, she tells us in the interview, but she says the fact that people were getting her boyfriend was getting a little jealous, and he basically in the hall said, that she Dawn dated a Chinese guy just to make her feel bad, right? Yeah. And she says something in that interview that's profound. She says, "I have not met a man on campus who's worthy to lick Shay's boots."
Wow. After all these years.
After all those years. And I think it's really interesting because I have a friend in college who said the fact that she actually thought about me for 20 years. And the reason every day, and the reason why, and I'm like, you were married during some of that time too. But it wasn't this romantic thing per se. It was about unconditional love. She said, "I had never tasted unconditional love until I met you." So when I say that this is not just about me, this is about all of us having access to unconditional love and acceptance. If you know that the divine loves you that way, you're allowing other people to bathe in the warmth of that light. It's the light that's coming through you. It's the light bright. The light bright does not make any light on its own. And so when you push it in, it's connected. I'm the vine, you're the branches. Connect back into the source. Plug into the source.
I love that. Absolutely love that. It has been amazing talking to you this morning. Like, so much fire. I can't wait to see what's next. I'm going to drop the link for the book in here, all the links for all the places. But thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I enjoyed this.
Nothing happens on accident. This is a reason. It's perfect. Nisha, your light shines so bright. I thank you so much for the leaps of faith that you are encouraging other people to take, to honor and give themselves permission to be able to honor their choice. And beautiful. I've enjoyed my time with you so much. I wish you, not just wish you, I trust the fact that this is just, everything that you're doing will just continue to grow, and you'll fan the flame in other people's lives. There's a bunch of phoenixes, firebirds out there.
Yes.
Fan the flame. Fan the flame. When a phoenix bird flaps its wings, it naturally fans the flame of other phoenix birds, and that's what you're doing. So thank you so much for what you're doing in people's lives.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Bye.
See you next time.